Okay, the last part of 5.2 is we're going to learn how to rationalize a binomial denominator. Okay, when you have a fraction that contains a radical, we can never leave a radical in the bottom of a fraction. We cannot do that. So we're going to have to simplify this. And we do this, it says to rationalize the denominator that has a binomial denominator multiplied by the conjugate of the denominator. Okay, if you go back up here and look at this example where it was x minus the square root of 10 and it was x plus the square root of 10, well, when we FOILed that, what happened to the radical? Okay, these two radicals canceled each other out, they were gone, and this was able to be simplified, and there was no radical in our answer. These are actually conjugates of each other, and that's why when we're trying to rationalize our denominator, we choose the conjugate, is because a conjugate, when we FOIL, the radical is going to drop out. And so what a conjugate is it's a plus the square root of b and a minus the square root of b. You notice the same two terms are used. It's just one's going to be plus and one's going to be minus. So it says, what is the reduced radical form of each expression? So I'm going to simplify this. I can't leave the radical in the bottom. So I'm going to multiply 2 plus the square root of 5 by its conjugate. And that would be 2 minus the square root of 5. So I use the same two terms, I just change the sign. So I'm going to multiply the bottom of the fraction by that. Now if I multiply the bottom of the fraction by that, I also have to multiply the top of the fraction by that. We always do the same thing to the bottom and the top of the fraction in order to keep an equivalent fraction. Okay, in the numerator, you're going to go ahead and you're going to distribute. So you're going to take 1 times 2 and 1 times the square root of 5. Well, taking 1 times anything doesn't change, so it's still going to be 2 minus the square root of 5. Now, on the bottom, this is where we have to FOIL. So I'm going to take first term times first term. 2 times 2 is 4. I'm going to take the outside product. This is a 2 times the negative square root of 5. That's negative 2 square root of 5. I'm going to multiply the inside product. That's a positive 2 square root of 5. And then I'm going to take the last term times the last term. This is a positive times a negative is a negative. Square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 25. Okay, so I FOILed that denominator. Okay, now I'm going to simplify down here. Okay, so I've got 2 minus the square root of 5 in the numerator. In the denominator, I've got 4, and then the negative 2 square root of 5 and the positive 2 square root of 5. Those two things are going to cancel each other out. Again, that's why we chose the conjugate, because the outside and the inside products are always going to drop out. And then the square root of 5 can be simplified. That's minus square root of 25 is 5. Okay, I'm going to take this another step because I know that 4 minus 5 equals a negative 1. And then my last step, I'm just going to divide these pieces by a negative 1. 2 divided by a negative 1 is going to become a negative 2. And a negative square root of 5 divided by a negative 1 will become a positive square root of 5. And I'm done. That's my answer simplified. Okay, up here, I'm looking at the denominator. It's always the denominator that we choose the conjugate for. So in this case, the conjugate would be 2 plus the square root of 3. And if I multiply the bottom times that, I have to multiply the top times that as well. Okay, up on the top here, we're going to FOIL that. So I'm going to take first term times first term. 5 times 2 is 10. The outside product would be a positive 5 square root of 3. The inside product would be a negative 2 square root of 2. And the last term times the last term would be a minus square root of 6. Okay, again, these are both under radicals, so we can multiply the radicands. Okay, when I FOIL the bottom, first term times first term is 4. The outside product is a positive 2 square root of 3. The inside product is a negative 2 square root of 3. And the last term times the last term is a negative square root of 9. Okay, again, this outside and this inside piece, they're going to drop out. So I'm going to have 10 plus, does anything up here, any of these radicals like radicals? They all have different radicands. None of them can be simplified. Nothing can be brought out. So they're all just going to have to stay. 5 square root of 3 minus 2 square root of 2 minus the square root of 6, all divided by, this would be 4, and then this would be the square root of 9 is 3. So 4 minus 3 is 1. So if I have 1 in the denominator, do I need to even keep it? And the answer is no. Your answer would just be 10 plus 5 square root of 3 minus 2 square root of 2 minus the square root of 6. And I don't even have a fraction because 1's now in the denominator. Okay, same thing with these last two examples. Okay, what's my conjugate here? I would say 1 plus the square root of x. 1 plus the square root of x. I'm going to FOIL the bottom, and I'm going to just distribute on the top. Okay, so negative 4x times 1, and a negative 4x times the square root of x. Okay, can't do anything with that. There's nothing that's like, so we'll leave it that way. When I FOIL this, first term times first term is a 1. The outside is going to be a positive 1 square root of x, and the inside is going to be a negative 1 square root of x. Last term times last term would be a negative square root of x squared. So in the numerator, there's nothing I can do with that. It doesn't look very nice, but that's where we're going to leave it. And in the bottom, these are going to cancel each other out. So I'm going to have 1 minus the square root of x squared. Take your exponent, divide it by your index. You're just going to get an x. And we leave our answer like that. And lastly, conjugate here would be 2 plus 2 square root of 8. 2 plus 2 square root of 8. We're going to have to FOIL both on the top and the bottom. So first term times first term would be a 6. Outside, I'd take the 3 times the 2, and that would be 6 square roots of 8. Inside product would be 2 square roots of 8. Last term times last term would be a positive 2 square root of 64. We take the square root of 8 times the square root of 8 is the square root of 64. Okay, down on the bottom here, I do first term times first term, and I get 4. Outside product is a positive 4 square root of 8. Inside product is a negative 4 square root of 8. Last term times last term is a negative 4 square root of 64. Okay, we got a little more simplifying we can do. Okay, these are like each other. I can add those together. And then down here, 2 times the square root of 64. The square root of 64, this is equal to 8. So 2 times 8 is going to be 16. So I'm going to have a 6 plus a 16. That's going to be 22 plus, and these are like each other, so 6 plus 2 would be 8 square root of 8 over. Here, these are going to cancel out. And then this also, square root of 64 is equal to 8, so we're going to take negative 4 times 8. This is going to be a 32. So this is 4 minus 32. That's a negative 28. Okay, and then lastly, you can see that all three of these values right here, these are all divisible by 2. So that means we can reduce that fraction. And if you're going to reduce this fraction, all three of these have to be reduced. Since they're all divisible by 2, I'm going to divide them all by 2 and get 11 plus 4 square root of 8 over negative 14. And that's where I would leave my answer. Okay, go back to that book assignment I gave you, that page 253, 41 through 48, and you can now do the last 4 questions on that assignment.